Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of our podcast, Getting IT Right, where we explore challenges organisations are facing in IT and cybersecurity, offering practical insights from industry experts. Today, I'm pleased to welcome back James and Jonathan from Ash Cybersecurity, one of our trusted partners, who bring a wealth of experience in simplifying and enhancing cybersecurity strategies for businesses of all sizes to help them focus on what matters most. I'm Emma Brewer, Marketing Executive at Intelligence, and we are an IT consultancy and managed services provider. One of our cornerstone services is managed cybersecurity, so security technology is very important to us, along with our collaboration with Ash. Both Ash and Intelligence share the goal of helping organisations cut through complexity to achieve smarter and more impactful IT and security outcomes. For those who missed our previous episode, there was an insightful discussion on security leadership, exploring what it takes to lead effectively in the ever-changing world of cybersecurity, and we also explored some of the benefits of a fractional CISO. If you did miss our last episode, we highly recommend you go and check it out. In this episode, we're looking into the challenges surrounding security technology, including why increased spending doesn't guarantee better outcomes, the risks of overlapping technologies, and how to simplify security investments for maximum impact. So, let's get started. Hi James, hi John. My first question for you both is, what are the challenges you're seeing when it comes to the security technology landscape?
Thanks, Emma. So one of the main reasons we set up Ash is that we've got a view that most organizations tend to fall into the same traps when it comes to delivering security and delivering controls. And actually, that gives us an opportunity to do things in a much more efficient and effective way. And when it comes to investment in cybersecurity technology, we see organizations of all shapes and sizes spending more and they're spending more and more on the latest, the hottest technologies. And when we look at sort of recent Gartner reports, we're expecting to see spending on software alone to get up to about $100 billion this year, which will see it sort of grow over the past 3 years on a sort of 14% year-on-year rate, which is quite eye-watering. And the challenge we see with this increased spending on tech is that actually it eats into the overall security spend. So how many people I can have, third-party spend, other bits and pieces that a program needs. And spend on tech tends to inflate ongoing budgets because you tend to enter into multi-year contracts, which ties you into ongoing spend. And I think crucially, often just the spend on technology doesn't move the needle in terms of increasing maturity and improving security. And that's because technologies either aren't properly implemented and operationalized, or actually we see organizations have overlap and sort of a competition between the technologies that they're deploying.
So the technology landscape seems increasingly complicated. So John, what's behind these challenges? Why is it so difficult?
Yeah, it's really a combination of factors, but a number of recurring themes that we see from the buyer side of the fence. So many organizations are still taking a best of breed approach when selecting security technologies. It's really understandable that security leaders want the best tools to protect their environments given the increasing threat landscape. So it's natural to turn to the best products. And similarly, if you're a security leader going into an organization, you're going to want to turn to products that you know and that you trust to deliver. The challenge with this is that what's best in class or what you know or have used previously isn't necessarily the best fit for the organization in question. Another challenge that we see is that organizations sometimes genuinely or fail to understand their requirements of the technology. So if you're just focusing on what you need rather than why you need it, you might end up with a fantastic suite of security products and capabilities at your disposal. But if you haven't really clearly defined what good looks like and what you're trying to achieve and how you're going to do it, how you're going to measure success, and crucially, you've got all of your stakeholders on the same page, then you're going to end up with poorly defined delivery plans. And so again, whilst you might have a load of great tech, there's a good chance you're not going to be effectively using that to remediate risks.
Mm. And is there also a risk of ending up with overlapping technologies?
Yeah, absolutely. I think sort of with the approach that John's outlined, you're almost certainly going to end up with multiple overlapping capabilities. So even if you're doing the right things in effectively landing that technology you've bought, it becomes really expensive and really inefficient. And at a time when we're seeing budgets be restricted in most organizations and the overall economy starting to struggle, I think it's really important that organizations are acting responsibly when it comes to those investments they're making. And certainly for larger and more complex organizations, what we see is this approach leading to sort of almost an internal market with competing or conflicting activities across the organization. So if you're big and you've got different organizations unintentionally using sort of different products for certain things like threat and vulnerability management, you're going to struggle to get effective and consistent results across the business. And I think similarly, then if you're buying best of breed products for a really specific or narrow use case, which may be completely fine, your teams might not, though, be aware of the full capabilities that that technology can deliver. And as a result, again, you're not going to be achieving the full value of that investment.
Yeah. And of course, like any other technology, security products need to be operated effectively. So that should be factored in when planning new investments.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's another trap that we see people and organizations falling into, i.e., that failure when it comes to planning the deployment and operationalizing the tools. Often there's a lot of focus on building the business case, securing the necessary senior stakeholder buy-in, securing the budget. That the planning required to land and operationalize those products sometimes gets neglected. So it's really important to factor in the people, the processes, the operating models that you need, not just to land the technology, but to successfully integrate it into ways of working, to maintain it as part of the business as usual function of your security team.
So what about the vendor landscape? It's surely no wonder that any organization is going to struggle to unpick what they really need when there are so many products on the market. I mean, if they all say they're the best, and increasingly vendors are expanding their portfolios and so increasing the overlap and competition.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the challenge around the security tech sort of landscape is undoubtedly exacerbated by the industry and the market for security technologies. Again, I think we see a number of different reasons for this. Firstly, there's no real consistent language or framework that's used to describe security capabilities and features, making it quite hard to actually compare products. Many vendors these days will map their products against the MITRE ATT&CK framework, but that tends to be quite vendor-led and doesn't really necessarily tell you what the products actually do. So it's left to the buyers to unpick the jargon, to clearly understand all of the different kind of features that are available and how they compare with the competition. On top of that, I think what we're seeing is that many vendors are also looking to continuously expand their portfolio of products to create holistic security platforms rather than just focusing on specialist products. Last year alone, we saw Cisco's acquisition of Splunk. We saw Google's attempt to purchase Wiz. We've seen CrowdStrike acquiring Adaptive Shield and Flow Security, to name just a few examples. And this is driven partly by vendors wanting to compete across a different range of domains. Of course, there are many benefits to that. If you're an organization and you're looking to consolidate or reduce the number of vendors that you've got, that can be quite helpful. But one of the downsides of that is it really increases the potential for overlapping capabilities and just generally makes the landscape more complicated, which has a knock-on effect in terms of an organization's strategy or decision making around security technology.
Yeah, I'd agree with those points, John. I think I'd also add that as we sort of see the market becoming more crowded and competitive, the hype machine around cybersecurity is definitely increasing. And then what we have is sort of vendors leading the market by investing heavily in the brand, in the jargon, in the grand claims, and more recently, actually, sort of the criticism of their competitors. And that only serves to make it harder for security leaders to sift through all of that noise and figure out what they really need.
Yeah, that's really difficult. So if it's challenging for security leaders, how do CIOs, CTOs, and CFOs, for example, support CISOs in making good security decisions while protecting and prioritizing their organization's investments in cybersecurity technology? So what should organizations be doing and how are you helping them?
Yeah, so at Ash, we take a straightforward approach and really trying to simplify cybersecurity for organizations, no matter their size, shape, or industry. And we focus on helping them to understand and deliver against what good looks like for them. So I think the key part around making good technology decisions in investments is to really start off with the capability and not the technology. So how we'd start with that is we'd look at the basics because fundamentally, the security requirements are pretty much the same across all organizations. And from by that we mean sort of that everybody needs visibility over their estate so they can see their assets, vulnerabilities, and threats. They need a way of measuring and reporting on risk. They need the ability to protect their infrastructure, their identities, their applications, and their data, the ability to sort of detect and respond to threats and incidents, and a capability to sort of train and educate staff at all levels.
And then how do you start to translate that into the products organizations need to actually go and buy?
Yeah, it's a really good point. So I think such is the coverage of sort of more modern security technologies that actually, if you're a smaller to medium-sized organization, those requirements we've just sort of talked about can usually be met with a much smaller subset of the vast array of products that are out in the market. So, for example, a modern EDR solution will be able to give you the visibility of your events and applications across your endpoints. It'll allow you to have network sort of discovery capability. It'll support your threat and vulnerability management, help you make risk-based prioritization decisions, allow you to do sort of threat hunting and automated threat detection, and then sort of look at your attack surface as well. And the list goes on. So the example here is that actually, if you're deploying EDR across all of your endpoints, you've probably covered the capabilities that 10 years ago, maybe 8 years ago, you'd have needed 3 or 4 different products to provide. And then if you take that same principle across other domains, so identity, applications, etc., you can then quickly and efficiently understand what's the right security technology for you to give you the coverage against the capabilities you need.
Yeah, that makes sense. But there are loads of EDR products on the market. So how do you get to the right one for your organization?
Yeah, well, of course, every organization is different. So that's where the organizational context comes into play. So firstly, what does the organization look like in terms of size and complexity? How federated is it when it comes to governance and technology? Is most of your infrastructure in the cloud or on-prem? Are your applications largely off the shelf? Are they SaaS applications or custom built? And what's the makeup of your environment in terms of operating systems across the estate? Secondly, what's the strategy and culture of the organization? And what's the maturity when it comes to cybersecurity? So, for example, are you looking to reduce the number of vendors that you have to deal with? Do you have key strategic partnerships supporting other parts of the business? In terms of culture, are you a lean startup that wants to empower an agile and creative workforce, or perhaps you're working in an environment that's much more heavily regulated, where compliance against regulatory frameworks is of the utmost importance? And what does your workforce look like as well? Are you an organization of techies and developers, or do most people have less technical roles? And finally, are you starting from a position of very low maturity, so you need a big boost and an uplift in your security posture, or are you, well into a well defined security program, and what you're looking to do is iteratively improve maturity of security?
Yeah, again, agreed with all of that. I think the other thing I'd add in is that you need to look at sort of what you already own, and this might sound a bit noddy, bit obvious, but actually the organizations we work with often can't easily answer that question. So what products have you bought? What do you own? But then actually, when do the licenses expire? There's no point thinking about sort of changing technology if you're sort of 6 months into a 3-year deal, or if you are, that's going to be very expensive to change that. And sort of above and beyond sort of what you've got and where you are in terms of sort of the purchasing cycle, what features are you using, and what are available within those products? And then how well are you using those features and capabilities? So you need to start to understand what's the actual coverage of those technologies and features. and how much of your sort of end user estate or your server estate has EDR, as an example, and how does sort of that visibility of your assets span across different parts of your organization when we think about perhaps on-premise or cloud, as an example.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So once you understand the required capabilities and the context of the organization, then you can start to build out your technology roadmap.
Yeah, exactly that, Emma. So once you've defined what good looks like 1, 2, or 3 years down the line, then you can work backwards to plan the steps to get there from there.
And you mentioned earlier that preparation and planning ensure that you maximize the technologies you are ultimately investing in to ensure that you have the right people and processes in place to operationalize and maintain the technologies. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, as is so often the case with any failing technology deployments, the actual technology is rarely the biggest challenge or the blocker. And certainly we see this with investments in security technologies and products, where the biggest problems are often in the way that the products have been deployed and adopted, or rather not adopted, as the case may be. And that leads to failure to really capitalize on those investments.
So, James, what are the key elements to get right when it comes to actually delivering security technologies?
Well, we think it all starts with defining that strategy and roadmap and then really ensuring that your relevant stakeholders are aware and bought into achieving the same outcome. So it's really important that you're sort of communicating and selling the vision, but that doesn't just stop at the senior stakeholders or the budget holders. You also need to work with your operational teams to explain what you're trying to achieve and the priorities of the piece of work. So you're all working towards that same goal. And I think sort of John alluded to it, but with all project planning, it's really important not to neglect the necessary resources needed to deliver the change, but also to consider the right operating model to maintain it. So you need to ensure that you're engaging the right operational teams and got the right governance in place to oversee that change you're trying to achieve, and then it's budgeted for, so the project to deliver the technology is fully covered. And as part of that, what you need to be considering is what are the outputs of that technology, that system we're going to implement? What action are we looking to generate as a result of those outputs? And therefore, what skills do we need and what capacity do we need in the relevant teams to deliver that outcome and then deliver the value that the technology is there for?
Great. So, to conclude, what would you like to leave our listeners with?
I think I'd like to leave with a few key questions. So firstly, when it comes to understanding what success looks like, do you know, to James's point, what outcomes you're looking to deliver, and how are you going to measure those outcomes so that you can actually demonstrate success and demonstrate improved maturity? Second would be to ask the question, do you know what you own? What value you're getting from your existing investments? And how do you articulate that on an ongoing basis to demonstrate success and build confidence amongst your stakeholders? And then finally, I'd ask whether your strategy around security technology is clearly understood and communicated through the organization. So in addition to just understanding why you're investing, have you got the unity and buy-in across your operational teams, and are they invested in maximizing the value of the tools at their disposal?
Some very good questions there for listeners to ask themselves. So I guess what we've learned is from aligning the right technology to ensuring effective implementation, it's clear that success hinges on strategic planning, clear communication, and the right organizational buy-in. So that's been a really interesting discussion. Thank you so much, both of you, for your time. If you want to find out more about how to improve your cybersecurity strategy and about managed security services, do go to our website at www.intelligence.com, where you'll find out about Ash and their cybersecurity solutions as part of their fractional CISO as a service, as well as our managed security services. Once again, thank you, James. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, everyone. See you next time.
Thanks, Emma.
Thanks, Emma. Cheers.